The House prepares to vote on a Republican health care bill this week after the Senate on Thursday rejected Democratic legislation to extend those pandemic-era Obamacare subsidies that expire at the end of the year.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We're joined today by my colleagues on the editorial page, Kate Batchelder-Odell and Kim Strassel. Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, recently pushed the U.S. into the longest government shutdown in U.S. history by demanding to renew these supercharged Obamacare subsidies from the COVID days. But that idea still doesn't have the votes to get through the Senate, with a bill to extend the credits for 3 years failing last week to clear the 60-vote threshold. The vote was 51-48 with 4 GOP yeses. On the House side, meantime, Republicans unveiled their own bill that they hope to vote on this week. That is called the Lower Healthcare Premiums for All Americans Act. Let's listen to House Speaker Mike Johnson at a press conference today explaining what this bill is supposed to do.
The bill has 5 key reforms. I'll just reiterate some of this real quickly. It reduces premium cost through cost-sharing reduction payments. It brings pharmacy benefit manager transparency and removes the hidden cost of prescription drugs. It allows small business owners and independent workers to form association health plans. It provides more choice for employees to customize their health care plans, and it protects small businesses from costly regulatory overreach. According to the latest CBO projection, Republicans' cost-sharing reduction payments, just that provision alone, would reduce premiums by at least 11% and will save taxpayers tens of billions of dollars, about $30 billion.
Kate, in your view, what are the important pieces of this health care bill that Republicans are now proposing? And what do you make of the state of the health care debate on Capitol Hill?
So I think, there's a lot of different proposals floating around Capitol Hill, and there's a lot of frenetic coverage about how the Republicans are in disarray on healthcare. And so I think it's important, before we get to the policy details, to step back for a minute and frame what's happening, because for months now, the Democrats have assumed that they could convince Republicans to extend these pandemic emergency subsidies for healthcare. They shut down the government thinking that it would be a winning issue for them and that they would get the COVID subsidies before they reopened the government. And that didn't happen. And they have been using, these kind of arguments that millions of Americans are going to suffer, and the Republicans need to just extend the subsidies, keep throwing money into Obamacare, don't ask any questions about why this law isn't working very well or whether it's encouraging fraud, whatnot. And that didn't work. And so the real news here is that these temporary credits that Democrats set to expire themselves are very likely to expire at the end of the year. And I think so what we usually see is that the politics of the entitlement state are such that once you put a new subsidy in there, it's very hard for someone to repeal them or to let it expire. And so I think Republicans, first of all, deserve a lot of credit for working to not just extend these subsidies. And I'm not sure, if you had told me several months ago, having followed Republican politics on healthcare for a decade, that Republicans would allow these subsidies to expire and would be trying to coalesce around a suite of alternatives to give people more healthcare choice. I mean, that is a more promising place than I thought maybe Republicans would have panned out. Now, just real quickly on the bill, I want to just highlight one plank of the bill that I think is an important starting point for a conversation about the policy details, and that's association health plans. So Republicans are looking for ways not just to try to fix Obamacare and all of its problems, but get people insurance that they like better, that maybe has richer networks. Obamacare has very high deductible, very narrow networks, and the insurance having insurance is not that valuable if you get cancer and you can't get into a good cancer treatment center. So association health plans are a lifeboat out of Obamacare, and what they are basically allowing businesses in similar industries to team up and offer insurance, because small businesses where people don't have health insurance, small businesses want to offer health insurance. It's crucial for retaining workers, but they often can't do it because they don't have the economics, the scale to offer health insurance. And so this is a way to allow businesses to team up, get bigger risk pools, and make offering insurance more affordable. And so just to zero in here, the COVID credits that just throw money down, more money at Obamacare are expiring. And also Republicans are proposing at least one plank that is really important in allowing people to get better quality coverage through their employer.
Kim, a couple thoughts jumping off on that. I guess there are separate questions. One is whether this Republican bill that Mike Johnson is pushing, if it passes the House, whether that could get enough votes to get over the same 60-vote threshold in the Senate and to become law. But a separate question, I guess, on whether it's the beginnings of Republicans offering a clearer policy choice and an alternative to the existing Obamacare system. And I guess I would second what Kate said earlier when Chuck Schumer picked this fight over these expiring Obamacare subsidies. It was not clear to me that there were not going to be. It was not clear to me that he would not be able to find enough Republicans to get that policy over the finish line. And it seems like he has not managed to do that. And so rather than the old story of Republicans in disarray here, do we have Republicans in array?
I think that Chuck Schumer not only did not anticipate that he wasn't going to be able to make Republicans fold on this. I think the last thing he expected was exactly what we've seen happen. And to second Kate's point, the big thing that has happened over the past couple of months is that Republicans have re-engaged on healthcare, and they have not done that in 8 years. And not only, as Kate noted, have they decided that it looks likely that they are going to let these very bad subsidies lapse, because that would be a recipe for continuing down the road of just throwing more money at a broken Obamacare system. I think a couple of really important things have come out of that. One is that they've decided where they're going to fall on the question of Obamacare, which is that they have realized they can't just repeal it, which was the longtime position of the Republican Party. And the problem is that the law, and it was designed this way, has become this Esser's maze, and you can't really deconstruct it very easily. And if you just yanked it out in total, the structural ramifications of that, the shock and the disruption would be so extreme that Republicans have decided they can't do that, which gets to point two. They have coalesced around the notion that if you can't kill it, you need to provide alternatives to it. You need to be able to begin moving people out of it, starve it essentially, let it die its own death by offering far better provisions and ways to get insurance that's cheaper and gives people more of what they actually need and want. And so what we saw this week was the caucus beginning to unite around some of the basic policies from how that might happen. And most of them are very good. Kate mentioned one of them. You've also got an alternative for small businesses that might not be able to join an association health plan, where they can essentially put money into employer accounts that allow them to buy insurance, these health reimbursements, as it were, cost sharing, which is really important. It's complicated, but essentially tries to deal with this provision in Obamacare that requires insurers to reduce deductibles and copays. Has ended up costing a lot of money, making everybody's premiums go higher. They've got a way of addressing that. Does this get through? Here's a problem. There are a number of House Republicans, moderates, who still would prefer to have an up and down vote on these insurance subsidies and extend them. I give Mike Johnson credit. He looks to have quelled that movement. There was talk of a discharge petition to force a vote on this. I think instead he's going to get Republicans to at least go along with this vote. I do not see this particular plan passing the Senate because Democrats are simply so bloody minded on this issue. They either want straight up continuation of these subsidies or nothing at all, because cynically they view this as a good issue for them. They want to go into next year's election saying, look, nothing's been done on healthcare and it's Republicans' fault, even though they will be the obstacle to any kind of improvement in the system. I see this instead potentially getting rolled into some sort of second reconciliation bill or something that they do next year. And that's good too. Letting this subsidy deadline pass and taking the heat off of having to find an immediate solution is going to give them even more time to maybe make this reform even better, because there's still a lot of other ideas out there, including getting rid of some Obamacare mandates that could really help the system as well, too.
Kate, talk about some of the problems in the Obamacare Rube Goldberg machine. And I was struck by a couple of statistics in the Journal's editorial on this Republican proposal. The headline on that, if readers want to find it, is the GOP's better healthcare ideas. The first is that the percentage of people who have any kind of healthcare insurance coverage through the year hasn't changed from 2019 to 2024. And just to set the level on that, these are figures from the Census Bureau. It says in 2024, most people, 92% or 310 million, had health insurance for some or all of the year. The breakdown is about 54% is some kind of employer-based coverage. Then it's Medicare with 19%, Medicaid with about 18%, direct purchase coverage about 11%, and then a few percentage points for TRICARE, VA, military health care. The other statistic from this editorial that struck me is it says that among workers who are offered employer-sponsored health insurance, the take-up rate has been declining from something like 73% in 2019 to about 65% now. And, that strikes me as moving in the wrong direction. If you are getting people who are being offered employer-sponsored health insurance and are declining that, and presumably many of them are getting it from the Obamacare exchanges, you're taking people from a private system, non-subsidized, and welcoming them into a public system where there are subsidies available.
Well, and Kyle, the phenomenon you're describing was by design by Democrats, in the sense that they enriched the Obamacare subsidies and made Obamacare plans free for a lot of people. And that is part of the goal, because you want to move people more onto the system. You want to get closer to a single payer healthcare system. And so when you're looking between your employer coverage or a plan that costs you nothing, even if your employer coverage is better, a lot of people are going to choose the plan that costs you nothing. And again, that is part of how Democrats want the system to work. They want to move millions of people more onto this system. I do want to zero in on two items about Obamacare, which I think Mike Johnson described on Kim's podcast as like diabolical in how they designed it and their substance to that. And so there's two things to focus on here. One of which is, I think the reason the Republicans have decided it's better to let the credits, the COVID subsidies expire, is because they've been an enormous magnet for fraud. The going to free plans where people don't have any requirement to pay anything has just basically infused a lot of people in the system who maybe moved, maybe aren't relying on this coverage anymore, don't even know they have it because they're not paying anything for it. I mean, we wrote about a Government Accountability Office report that just came out this month saying GAO, I mean, it's tragicomedy. GAO basically creates all of these fake accounts and tries to get subsidies for them, and all of them get approved. And thousands of dollars of subsidies are just flowing, despite the fact that GAO's fake accounts don't provide any documentation to support them getting a subsidy. In Obamacare, there now these fully subsidized plans, people who pay nothing, roughly about 40% of them had no claims last year, meaning they didn't pick up a prescription, they didn't use it at a doctor's office. And that's not just healthy people who aren't calling on their plan. That number is way too high to account for just people who are using insurance as a backstop. I mean, it's a magnet for fraud. And I think that really got Republican attention, and that has helped organize the conference around, okay, we need everybody to have some buy-in in their health insurance, even if it's $5 a week, even if it's $10 a week for those who are closer to the poverty line. But that has been a real forcing function, is the fraud. Real quick, too, I mean, the second thing that really underscores, I think, the difficult policy spot that Republicans are in is Mike Johnson was talking in the clip we listened to about appropriating these cost sharing reductions that insurers are supposed to provide to help bring down people's deductibles. This policy has led to this crazy phenomenon where insurers load all of their premium increases on the benchmark silver plan, the mid-tier plan, And what everybody's trying to figure out is how to get that to stop. And so appropriating these required cost sharing reductions, as they're called, actually makes premiums go down because of this dysfunctional insurance phenomenon. So that I use that second example because it really gets at the rock and the hard place, which is that the Republicans, full repeal is too heavy a political lift, and yet some of these discrete fixes are very challenging to make without causing some problem in the other system, in the Obamacare system, because of how it was designed and set up. So I actually think Republicans are starting from a good place here, which is try to expand choice, try to make some discrete improvements where you can, and try to build some intellectual support among the public that, hey, Obamacare, not great insurance, not working. We need to start to really get serious about fixing some things about it.
Kim, one thing that always strikes me when we talk about healthcare is the dysfunctional economics of it. Economists talk a lot about incentives, and you want people to have skin in the game so that if they are choosing a more expensive plan, for example, they are doing it, and part of that at least is coming out of their own pocket. And the idea of these free plans seems to have just totally broken that sort of thinking in these Obamacare exchanges. So one thing that the Trump administration has been trying to do by regulation is require a $5 monthly premium for people who are automatically re-enrolled in a zero-cost plan and who have not affirmed or updated their eligibility information. So just to underline again, that again, they say that this is a $5 monthly premium if you are re-enrolled without your participation, and all they want you to do to make that $5 premium go away is to go in and confirm who you are and that you are eligible. And Kim, the fact that that is the baseline, that is considered a reform that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is having to do is a bit astounding. I mean, they're just rolling plans over from year to year without even having heard from the people who are the beneficiaries of the plans. Throwing a $5 break into that system strikes me as pretty common sense.
It's government. I mean, this is how it operates. It always blows my mind. We put government in control of one of the biggest sectors in the country. And then we sit here and go, what could possibly go wrong? Well, everything will go wrong. And what Kate was just describing is another amazing example, like this cost sharing thing, where we essentially, in a desire to make insurers lower deductibles and copays, their solution was to raise everyone's premiums. And as Kate says, peg it to this one plan that raises them premiums for everybody. And then the taxpayers are paying for it, and the people that are buying the healthcare are paying for it. And there's no benefit here. It's all downside. And this is what happens when you let government design healthcare. It's a complete mess. And this is why, look, I'm really hopeful. If we're having this little bit of a Republican renaissance on healthcare, that's great. It's fantastic. I have to say, as exuberant as I am about the initial proposals they have in here, and happy as I am too that they seem to be not falling for the pressure to actually do something immediately or do something to extend these subsidies. Getting past that deadline, I'm really hopeful that it will provide some breathing room for them to confront some of these bigger problems that Kate was going through, because they're going to have to do that at a certain point if you really want to provide premium relief. I mean, fraud is one of them. We're going to have to at some point confront this question of pre-existing conditions and the much higher premiums that are required of those. Not saying that we shouldn't cover them, but maybe some sort of alternate mechanism for how they are financed so that they're not being borne by everybody who doesn't have pre-existing conditions or a small class of insurance buyers. There are, mandates, absolutely ridiculous mandates in Obamacare, for instance, that govern age bands and how much of a discount you can give younger people compared to what you charge their oldest customers. That just causes younger people to drop out of the market and makes health insurance more costly for everybody. And so there's a lot of mandates and insurance regulations that they need to deal with too. This choice aspect is really, really important. But if you're also going to offer that choice, you have to make it very clear that some of these alternatives are exempted from some of these rules. And I would note that these association health plans, that's one of the best things, is that they do get to escape from some of these, the most terrible of these mandates. But Republicans, as long as they're going along here, this is their moment. Okay. This is a moment to really, and it goes hand in hand with the case they're trying to make about affordability. This has become a major cost for many, many Americans. If you wanted to do something substantive and really make people's monthly bills look a little better, this is your opportunity to go big.
Well, a Republican renaissance on healthcare would be something to behold, Kate. It does seem like after the repeal,
I said a little bit.
It does seem that after the repeal and replace effort fell short in 2017, say, Republicans kind of moved on to other issues. But it's hard to beat something with nothing. And particularly when the status quo involves handing out a lot of free plans and free money from a government that is running a deficit in the realm of $2 trillion a year. And so it is notable. Gallup had some new numbers. They're polling on the Affordable Care Act, ObamaCare. It says that approval among Americans has hit a new high of 57% as these enhanced COVID-era subsidies are about to wind down. And so that is the challenge. I can only imagine that Democrats intend to make healthcare and the expiration of these subsidies a big issue in the 2026 midterms. And Kate, if Republicans want to save themselves from a blue wave, perhaps, maybe this effort by Mike Johnson is the beginning of a Republican answer.
I haven't looked closely at that poll you mentioned, but I do think the public approves of Obamacare at a high level in the sense that they want people to be covered. They want people with pre-existing conditions to have access to health care. They have a general approval, but that the big problem is that for too long, Democrats have been able to get away with the argument that blowing up the health system was the only way to accomplish those goals. I think some of the public opinion polling on Obamacare, really does obscure a willingness on the public's behalf to consider reform should Republicans present it to them. I think also the conventional wisdom that the expiring COVID credits are a Republican liability is a little overbaked. One comparison I would make is that during the pandemic, you'll recall also that Democrats made the child tax credit a monthly basic income, basically, and paid it out to people monthly. And the thinking is that the thing would never expire, that people would become used to it, same as the entitlement state, it would grow, and you would never be able to repeal it. And what happened is that Republicans didn't vote to extend it, and it expired, and nothing happened. There simply wasn't this enormous political backlash that was predicted all over the press and all in sundry. And so given that the Obamacare politics are significantly more concentrated than paying a check to every household with kids in America, I mean, some of the people who will have premium increases because of these expiring COVID credits are seniors or 55 to 65, but maybe left the labor market early, maybe earned more than 400% of the poverty line because they could access these subsidies thanks to the Democratic expansion. So we're talking about a pretty narrow political set there. And that's why I say all that, because I think Republicans, yes, the prospect of them getting this across the finish line before Christmas is very dim. And there are some challenges in doing some of what Republicans would like to do in a reconciliation bill that can pass the Senate with 51 votes. There are procedural limits on that. But I think the politics improve after the subsidies expire and this threat of a deadline is no longer looming. And I think President Trump is ideologically flexible, if you will. And this is one example of where he's open to maybe actually, moving a plan and will get behind something, doesn't have a lot of blinders about it. And so I'm perhaps a little bit more bullish on the Republican renaissance because I think the politics and the political and media ground has changed over the past several years, and people understand that Obamacare, it drove up prices in all across different health insurance markets, including employer insurance. And it's simply not sustainable. And I think the public is more open to hearing a case from Republicans.
Thank you, Kate and Kim. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Potomac Watch.